important checklist. All right, if we couldn't do that, let's stop. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi from Servicenow. I've been here for about 10 years, senior developer evangelist, and happy to be here bringing you this information. We're going to check, see if the stream is up. Yeah, people got it. All right. Thank you very much for confirming that. This is July 9th. I have to think. My brain wants to go very far ahead. Good morning to everybody who's checking in on YouTube. I'll get to that in just a second. So July 9th, 2020, our topic today is the form and list data model. So this is a user contributed question. Thank you very much, John, for that. I'll get into the topic in a little bit. First, let's go through the pre-roll. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to share, like, subscribe, hit the notifications. You get all that so that you get the notifications when this comes up. Thank you very much for everybody's checking in. Drew and Scott and Andre. Wonderful to see you all today. We also do this on Twitch, just in case there's a glitch on YouTube. You got that for a couple of weeks. YouTube sticks around in perpetuity, and Twitch is for a couple of weeks because it's the free account. I don't know why we're not paying, but we'll get into that later. I encourage you to go over to the developer portal at developer.servicenow.com. Go check out free personal developer instance APIs. Oh, personal developer instances are going to be the first ones that you will get your hands on for Paris release. That's coming out very, very soon. Later this month, we will have that. And then when you're done with that, you quickly run over and sign up for the Tech Now episode on the 28th, where Jeremy and Craig and I will be talking all about APIs and enhancements and new features that are coming out in the Paris release so that you know what you're getting from your release. Let's go back to that. One of the other things you can do is join one of the meetups over at meetup.com. Get out of the way so you can see that URL if you haven't been there. Tens of thousands of people around the globe. I participated in one in Pittsburgh just last night, and it was a lot of fun. Smaller group. We talked about what they saw, did, and experienced at Knowledge 2020. Got some feedback on that, the VS Code extension, and source control, and lots of other topics for about an hour. It was a nice virtual meetup. Well, of course, all the meetups right now are virtual until we get back to some sense of normalcy and we can do in real life meetups again. So good morning to Rahul. Hey, everybody. Glad to see you. Thanks for joining. Wow, good turnout today. Let's continue on with this. This is the Servicenow community. You can see that behind me. This is where I get a lot of my ideas, a lot of the inspiration. Thank you for all your contributions. If you've got questions or issues, please don't post them in the live chat because I'm probably not going to, I might not see them because I'll be talking and demoing and whatnot. But also they will be short-lived. They'll be hard to find. In the community, it's a record. It's there. It's searchable. People years from now can thrive on your questions and answers. So if you're new to the community, browse around, get familiar with what forums there are. It's a wonderful resource. This is, and I'm not the only one to say this, this is the best online community that I've participated in over 35 years. I mean, I go back to the old bulletin board days with dial-up modems. That was one of the early communities that I was on, and obviously we've come a long way since then. But this is, professionally or personally, this is the best one that I've ever been on. And I don't say that with a bias. I say that honestly. That is what's going on. What is the link for Paris? Well, the documentation will be available as soon as early access is available. It's currently scheduled for July 23rd. So if you go to docs.servicenow.com, you'll find the release notes and everything on the 23rd, but not before. Okay. Let's go with that. I just happened to glance down and see a quick question. Anything else? We're not going to be doing any JavaScript today, so I don't need that link. We're not going to put it in the GitHub, so we don't need that link. We already did the webinar. So let's get on with today's topic. And it is contributed by viewer John. John is on today. Thank you very much. And we will get started with, his question was, is there a way for a client script to recognize what fields are on a form? Short answer is yes. Need to be a little familiar with the data model, the tables that it takes to put together a form. When you do configure form or form layout, you're simply manipulating records in a table. Pretty much everything you do on ServiceNow is in a record in a table somewhere. Okay, it's crazy how many tables there are. If you've ever looked, I think a baseline system has something like 2,000. When I started, it was around 1,000. 2,000 tables. That's a lot of stuff. So when you say, bring up this list, I mean, I can just go to, this list of approvals. It interrogates a table to say, what table did you want to go to? What view are you looking at? What fields should I put on there? Is this personalized? Is it system default? There's a whole bunch of questions that happen on the back-end platform to present this list that you see here. And of course, when you drill into a record, it does the similar kind of thing. What view, what table, what form, lots of different things go into what it takes to do this. Now, you've seen some of this when you do, as I mentioned, configure, form design. This is interrogating the same tables, just presenting it in a nice drag and drop UI. Or if you go to form layout, we've got different field types we can put on there. These are sections. These gray bars are denoting sections of the form. If you do form layout, configure form layout, it brings up a little different interface, but it's doing the same thing. You're saying, I want these reordered, I want these on, I want these off, I'm going to create a new section. That's pretty straightforward stuff. Let me go to my CLS app so that I don't mess with anything too significant. How to progress into ServiceNow developer role. Any suggestions, books? Start at developer.servicenow.com. There's the short answer. I'll give you a ding for that one. Ding. Developer.servicenow.com. Free learning plans. Get yourself a personal developer instance. Good stuff. So there you are. And I know people in the chat are going to be answering chat questions as well. This is a very common question we get. Might even want to look on the community. It's been posted there as well. So, okay, back to the topic at hand. Try not to get interrupted and sidebarred too much. There's a few tables we need to know about, and I am going to bring up my notes so that I don't miss anything because there's a lot of details in here. And get this going. Okay. First, a caveat. This is going to cover all the major points of form and list layout. It's not designed to be comprehensive. So these are the common ones that will aid you in learning what's in the system, how does it work, what is it doing, to get you through probably 90 to 95% of what you need to know. If you want to go exploring deeper, be my guest. As I was putting these notes together, I discovered a few fields and went, what is that for? How does that work? And uncovered a few secrets that I didn't know before. So I got you from about 75% to 95%, which I think is pretty darn good. So let's start with the first one that most people are familiar with, and that is a view. When you look at a form, let's take incident, for example. Incident.list, very common thing. We'll go to global so we can take a look at this in an editable format. And you look at the top of the list right here, okay? Up here in the corner, it says incidents. There's no view name, but in this hamburger menu, you can select a different view. It means there are different layouts for this list. If I say portal view, this is how things will look on Service Portal. You're going to have fewer columns because typically it would be on a mobile interface or something that doesn't need all those details. It would just be cluttered. There's also a mobile view. And you can see it says mobile view right up here in the corner next to which view, with a table to say which view you have selected. The default view has no name. So if you don't see a view, you're on the default view. I'll point out something interesting about the default view in just a second. All right, so lists have views. That means it's a different lens that you're looking at. I'm not showing you all the fields on all the tables, or it would look like a spreadsheet. It would just be a lot of horizontal scrolling, and nobody wants that. So what does it take to build that? Well, that comes out of a table called sys. Let me get back up here for you. Sys UI view. And if I put .list on here, it will show me all of the views in the sysui. And you notice there's only one called default view, has no label. There's one called accept, there's activity. And if you look in here, there's probably one called self-service, and so on and so forth. This is not I wouldn't call this the top of the hierarchy. It's referenced by lists and forms. So it will guide you and determine where you need to go, or if you have a view or if you need a view by that name. So just as a reference, it's like real common. It doesn't define a whole lot. If you look at the default view, it's got a name. No, it doesn't. It's got a title. It's whether or not it's hidden. You got roles that you can apply to that. It doesn't really say a lot. The power is in the related list down below. How many forms are using the default view? A lot, okay, because every form and every list has a default view. How many sections? We'll get into sections in just a minute. It's used, like you see here, by forms, form sections, lists, and related lists have views, separate from the lists. I'll get into related lists. I've got it here. I keep saying I'm forward referencing. I apologize for that. If a view, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. If a view starts with the name RPT, it is a list view for a report. These are easy to spot. So when you create a report and you say, I want to change these columns around, you're not giving it a view name. It's using the sys of the report and prefixing it with RPT. This is the way the system understands this is a report list view. That's all it's doing. And if you go into that record, it will say, these are, hey, look, I got one list. It's for this change request report. You can find out what tables and all that good stuff is in there. So that's kind of what views are for. They're really a framework for how to lay out the columns in a list or define more details about a form. Did I miss anything? The view reference list. Oh, yes, yes, yes. There is a view called reference list. I'm just going to, I can't type that today. Reference list. There's only one. It's called sysreflist. Some of you may know about this. Very special one. There are a few special ones in here. Actually, I should probably point those out. And it is used for lists and related lists. You most commonly see it on a reference field. So people ask me from time to time, hey, I'm looking at, let's see, I've got a reference field somewhere in here. Let's go back to incident real quick. Incidents, and open up this. And here's a reference field. And if I open up this pop-up window with the magnifying glass, this is the sysreflist view. So if you want to personalize or configure you can't personalize it because there's no cog. If you want to configure the columns that are in here, and I often do, because I'll pull this up and it'll say like just a name or a date. Go, that's no good. You can configure this the same way you configure other lists with this menu, configure list layout, and it will configure the list layout called sysreflist. So you can see up here, hard to see a little bit, sysparm view, sysparm_view, sysreflist is the name of that view. If you're ever in doubt about what view you've got, check the URL. Probably says sysparm_view somewhere in there. Okay. So you could separate the way that your reference list looks from your related list, looks from your default list. Okay. Special one there. If you take a table like task and you extend it to another table like safety or loaner request or customer complaint or whatever it is, you extend that task table and you don't have a view for that, even a default view. Right, let's do that real quick. Let's go to tables. And I am going to, let's jump back to my CLS app. I can do this from Studio even easier. Let's go to Studio and create a quick table. Show you what happens. You've probably seen this, but those of you who haven't, let's create a new table. And I will call this, view test. We'll call that view test, terrible name. It extends the task table. And I don't need a module, and let's put it in the CLS menu, create that table. I get my 66 or 67 default fields, whatever that is. And let's go back and refresh this so that under the CLS app, I now see my view test. If it doesn't, I haven't defined any form layout, any list layout, or anything else like that. What do you get for a list layout? You get the default from task. This is inherited. This is all part of the task inheritance thing. You get business rules, you get client scripts, you get fields, you get permissions, you get views. So, and what I find oftentimes is task type is the first thing to go. If I'm looking at a list of all one type of task through this module, I don't need a task type field. So get rid of it, gone. Then you can start putting in your other fields that you do need. Okay, you do that, of course, through configure list layout, Same kind of thing for the form. If it doesn't have a view defined, you're going to get the table you extended it from, you'll get that view. So important thing to note, you go, where did this come from? And why does it not look like what I need for my process? You haven't defined anything yet. Okay, it's inheriting it. There is no view related to this table. And the way that it does that, which is a great lead in, actually, before I get into forms, let's go back to lists for a quick sec. Lists are defined in the table. Let's get up here again. Sys, you can probably guess this one, sys UI list. Dot list, bring that back. Ding. Always goes to where the focus is. Now, sys UI list is pretty simple. It takes a table name and relates it to a view. And there's some other stuff in here that I'll point out along the way. For example, if I look for tables that start with x underscore blah, 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 I have my view x underscore CLS employee with the scope name in there. Open up that list record and it says, this is the table name. Pretty obvious. We need to know what table we're going to list. This is the default view, but the default view doesn't say which fields go on there. It's just a relation to say you have a default view. Here are the rules you need to see that view, that kind of thing. You saw that in the sysui view record. Some other fields I'll get into in just a second, but the list elements, this is a related table called list, sysui list element, has the fields and the order and any of those field controls. Remember when we were on the incident list? Some of you may have done this in the past, some of you may not. But let's go back to the list of incidents. If you take, say, a numeric field or something of that nature, you can do configure list calculations. And some of the list calculations you can do are total, min, max, and average. Okay. That is what's in this record on the list elements. Which columns do we want a total, min, max, average? Okay. That's where that's stored. If you ever wondered and you have to turn it off and you can't find it, you can go to sysui list, look at the related list elements for that, and manipulate them that way. I do this all the time. I want to know what the YouTube views are, so I'll take an average and a sum and put that on the views column, so I know what the view count is for the videos over the quarter, over the average. It's a cheap reporting mechanism is what it is, so you might be able to kill a few requests that people say, can you make a table that sums this up? It's like, no, but you can. Actually, I can, yes. Let me do that. It'll take 6 weeks. And wink, wink. No, it won't take 6 weeks. It'll take 6 seconds. All right, so that's sysui list and sysui element. Let me make sure I did not forget anything. References sysui view. We talked about relationships. Okay, there's this relationship field, and I wondered, what is this? And I said, what does it do? So click on the label, show it, and it points to sys relationship. This is some of the reverse engineering that I did. Sys relationship, if you don't know, is defined relationships. So normally when you create a reference field, you get a free related list connection. You can automatically put a record relating to another table on that table's related list. Okay, that's a freebie. But if you don't, if you need to somehow connect these and they're not related by a reference field, you can do a quick script to relate those. One classic example is on the incident table. On the incident form, you can put a related list of what calls by, sorry, I had a mental block there. It's still early in the morning. Calls by, incidents by same caller. Okay, that's one way you could do that. On a list, however, this one took a little more investigating. What is the relationship between a list and a list? Well, let's go and take a look. I believe it's on my course table. Go back to the history, go back to sysui list, and find my, oops, already had it there, starting with X. I think it was on the course table. There's one with a parent. I'm sorry, relationship. I think relationship is always empty on lists, but let's do, oops, not show matching. I want to do filter out. Take that out. Click, click, filter out. And, oh, that's just the ones that I made. Anything that's got a relationship. So syschoice has a relationship of choices. Interesting. That's probably because it might be a related list. We'll find out. Or what it relates to. I've got to figure that one out. Is it in my notes? Did I already figure this out once? Relationship, it's a, my answer is for the scripts, but that's not right. Maybe it is. Well, look. I'll get back to you on what the relationship is. The parent is even crazier. What's a parent list for a list? I thought that was the related list. It is not. If I look at my tables that start with X underscore, I have, not relationship, empty, the to-do table. Okay, and I look at to-dos in my CLS app. Let's just take a quick look at that table. I'm not going to type that out. It's going to be in to-dos. A parent list relationship is when you have an embedded list. And an embedded list looks like, it's on the videos, sorry. It's on the videos records. It says my parent is this. Here is a related list. And if I go to configure form layout and turn that into an embedded list, you see I've got lists down here. To do, to video, put that in, it becomes not a related list. It's kind of subtle because I only have one list on here, but it's actually part of the form. Much like when you create a table, as we did in Studio over here, you have this embedded list of table columns. You can make changes all day to that, but until you save, they're not saved. It's part of the form. A related list, you're manipulating the records kind of live. You don't have to save them. So that's the parent field as far as lists are controlled. I want to point something else out that's kind of interesting. If you haven't seen this, go back to sysui view for a second. Most of you are familiar with sysids. They're a unique identifier in the system that tells, it gives a record an identifier. When you're referring to a record in a reference field, for example, or any record in the system, it's going to have a sysid, or a GUID, as many systems call it. One unique thing that I discovered is the sysid for the default view. Watch this. This is one of my favorite little trivia questions. What is the sysid of the default view? Bring up VS Code so you can see this. Oh, look, I still have all my things from last time. And I create a new file. The sysid is default view. So if you have some code out there that is checking for 32 character hex values and it encounters this, it will fail. So just a bit of trivia. There's one other record somebody pointed out to me that I don't remember what it was, but it also has a very non-standard sysid. So you can also see this if you just hover over the record. Down on the URL on the bottom is, in fact, sysid equals default space view. Someone had fun with that one. Just a little bit of trivia that I threw in there for you. If a list view doesn't exist, I just created that CLS view. Of course, it will inherit that. But if it doesn't exist, let's say I went and created a brand new table. Okay, and I create a table called, well, actually, let's take one that I've already got. Let's take my task table. take that table, go over to my views, and see if I have a sys UI. Often when I'm doing this, debugging on lists and forms, I don't start at sys UI view because you'd have to go to the related list, then you find your filter, and it's going to tell you which list or section or whatever it's in. I usually start at sys UI section for forms and sys UI list for lists, because I already know what the table is, and I don't have to search very hard to find that. If this didn't exist, currently it says my task table is going to have active assigned to course description state. Okay. And I went and configured it and said, no, I'd rather have assigned to. The problem is it's currently alphabetic, and I don't want to do that. I want this to be, it won't display what I want to display. 0, and this will be 4. Let's reverse these. Okay, so when I look at the task list in my CLS table, I think that was the one. State assigned to course description active. Something happens, I don't know what, or some administrator comes along, doesn't recognize what they're doing, and they take this list record and they somehow delete it. Okay, he goes, you know what, I'm going to also take out your elements. What do you get when you go back to that list? Because it would be really bad if the system just went, I don't have anything for you. List not found. That's not a good experience. So what happens is, if you go back to the task, it will build one for you, and it says, I don't know what you want, but I'm going to take a number of fields. I don't know if it's all the fields or a certain number of them, first 7 or 8. I forget what the logic is there because I only have 5 on this one. Puts them in alphabetic order. So if you see this in your system, one of two things has happened. Something happened to delete the view, the sysui list entry, or it's already been created by default. Now, did it actually create a record? Let's find out. Lists, yes, and it saved those. So at least I have a starting point. And the next time the system references it, it's not like pulling this all from memory. It goes, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, there's a couple other things that I want to point out. There's also a user field in here, in the lists. You could probably guess what this is. If I have a default view for this, then user is empty. That's the system default. It applies to all users. So when I say configure list layout, I'm manipulating the fields on this record. Let's do that. Oops, I'm actually on the lists. We want to be on the task list. Configure list layout. And say, let's put state second and description first. Okay. That means active comes at the end. That's the default. Everybody gets it. Okay. We all remember our system foundations fundamentals training. The cog icon lets people personalize their list. So when somebody calls in and says, I don't see that field on my list, chances are they probably went in here and forgot how they got there. And you can always revert back to default. When you do this and make a change, let's say, I really like having the created date out here. Or as I often do, I put the updated date on a lot of records so I can sort them and see what I've modified recently. Okay. This is a very common layout for me, is to have a list of records sorted by descending updated time. Okay. What did that just do? That just went over here and made an entry for me. This is an override. It says, hey, Chuck's got his own way of looking at this thing. So forget what the system says. He's got his own special layout. So you may see a large number of these all with the same view for different users. Okay. That's perfectly fine. And again, if somebody says, hey, I can't see this, you don't want to walk them through the process of go to the cog, click, set back to standard defaults or whatever that big button says now. You can go in here, delete their record, have them refresh and do it again. So it's nice to know a little bit about the form and list data model so you can walk around and do these back-end things. Don't do this willy-nilly, especially on the system level stuff. Did I miss anything? Let's go on. We talked about sysui list element. Of course, now that I've got my own personalized form layout, it is exactly what you'd expect. Here are the columns I want and what order, and did I put any, users can't do the calculation stuff. That's all done through form control. So That is what it is. It's still going to be the same records with the same list layout. SysUI related list, you can probably guess what that is the one that shows up over here, SysUI related list, underscore list.list. Blow that up so you can see it a little bit better. So SysUI underscore related list is the table that gets you, back out, zoom, the layouts for related lists. As I mentioned, if you have a list of, we'll go back to incident.list, bring up an incident because it's got a couple of related lists in here. Task SLAs, for example. Okay. This related list layout, this comes from the table task underscore SLA. And this one, let's just take a quick mental note. SLA definition, type, target stage, business time left, blah, blah, blah. If I look at task under SLA, it may not match. It may, but it may not match. Nope. Task, SLA, type, target stage, business. Actually, it does match. You go, well, where did the task field go? On a related list, it doesn't show the parent record that it's related to. So let's go back to that incident real quick. And I have the list layout. And if I say configure list layout, this is going into the SysUI related list record to say, there's task. Why doesn't task show up on the list? It says, because you don't have to. Related lists are smart enough to say, of course it's going to be related to this particular task. What would be the purpose? Why would anyone want to see incident 10,112, 10,112, 10,112? That is a waste of a column, so I'm not even going to bother you with that, putting that on the list. You can define it. Actually, it's coming from the default SysUI list record because there's nothing to override it in sys related list. Okay. So the entry in sys related list is really just a binding between the view and the table. It has related list entries in here. If the related list entry doesn't exist, it takes it from SysUI list. It says, let's go and do that because I think I just did that in another form. Or we'll go back to global. Now let's stick with my CLS app because I like messing around with that since the scope is already taken. I have my courses, and courses have tasks, and tasks is an embedded list. So let's make it back to a related list by taking form layout, removing course from task, and away it goes. It's back to being a related list because you can't have both. Sorry, you can't have an embedded list and a related list. The embedded list will override the related list. And if I look at tasks, I have description state assigned to active. Is that the same as this? Description state assigned to course, don't need it, active, and this is personalized, updated. So let's go back to column defaults. I don't need course in that related list because I'm already looking at the course. Why do you don't need that? That's the same thing as I just did with incident. So let's do a form layout or list layout on this. SysUI related list should get a new update. Let's rearrange the description and the state. Up, up, down, down. And go back to related lists. Who got updated? Course did. It actually got created because it didn't exist before. So there is course, and it says your default course view is tied to this table. The related list entries, this is the interesting part, is open up this record and it says you have one related list, because if you have multiple related lists, it needs to know what order those go in. Notice the position field here. You could say, yeah, I've got 17 related lists. This is where it defines what order those go in. So the real value of SysUI related list is not the list layout. That goes into SysUI list. It's the order in which those go. Frankly, we probably could have put this order on a different place. I'm not sure exactly why it needed to go here. It didn't feel like the right place for me. But I didn't do the architecture, and it still holds up well, and we're obviously not suffering any performance problems. So that's the whole point of sysui related list and sysui related list entry. Let's get to forms. We've already covered a lot of this stuff that you need to know for the basic forms. And this gets to the heart of John's question. See if I can wrap this up in the next 15 minutes. I mentioned that I usually start with this table. Let's go up here, zoom in for you. Sys, spell it right. No, don't hit Command S. Sysui section dot list. Okay, that is very similar to sysui list. It binds a view to a table. So again, if I look at my tables that start with X underscore something something something, I'm going to go into the employee table and notice that I'm going to do a show matching on this guy. I have these sections. These are the sections of the form. Okay? Very easy to figure out. These compiled together will make up your form layout. So this is the good starting point. Table, 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 table. If I look at that form, I should see a detail section, an activity section, and a stats section. And sure enough, employee on CLS brings up detail stats activity. The one without a caption, and there's an order on this, is this top part. I call that section 0 because, you'll see this real quick, there's an order on these things as well. Just like the related lists, it says, where would you like to put this? Okay. Form sections has a sysui form section. So it's not sysui section, it's sysui form section table is where it defines the order. This is the part that feels like it should really go up here. Like, why? Because I haven't seen too many sections that have more than one sysui form section entry, but a one-to-one relationship pretty much says the field would be better off on that form. If I look, let me dig in a little further. I kind of skipped ahead. The sysui section element table is where it defines, just like the list element table, this is the section element table for the forms, the order, and you can see there's also this type. This is where you're going to see things like macros, lists. If it doesn't have an entry, it's a straight up field. Integer, reference field, date field, you name it, it's in there. Okay. The splits and the end splits will more than likely be set up this way. So you'll see those, whether you did this through Form Designer or Form Layout, you will get this same kind of table structure. This is where your fields are. So if somebody says, hey, I don't see a field, and you really want to verify that field is on there and it's not hidden by role or UI policy or something else, you can come in here and validate. Is that field really on the form in that section? Somebody asked me one time, what's the easiest way to delete a form section? Form Designer. You click X and it's gone. Okay? Don't come in here and start looking for records and deleting. Because the position is at the top. Don't delete that. Please don't. It's caused me more grief in the past than I can count. You have to literally come in here, make a new record, put some fields on there. I just got an error from YouTube. Uh-oh. Hopefully you're still watching me. We're going to press on as if nothing happened, and I'll take a look at it. If it fails miserably, I'll upload the recording. I've got a local MP4 as well. So that actually takes me pretty much to the end. We'll see how it goes. Don't delete the baseline views. Leave views like default view, leave portal, self-service. If you create a view called ESS, it will automatically label it as self-service, and this is what will be used for users who don't have roles, that kind of thing. Great stuff. There's a lot of them that come out of the box. Don't delete them. You can create and delete all your own views if you want. Generally, you don't edit this stuff. Somebody asked me one time, is there a way to add a field to every form in the Cmdb structure? Because they had a new field at the top Cmdb CI and they wanted to add it to every form. I said, you're going to need to know what section it goes on. Then you're going to have to create a section element record, and you're going to have to make sure that there's nothing in that position. It gets really convoluted, but you can see how knowing the table structure of lists and forms can really help you do something like that. That was a one-off. In John's case, it's a question of how do I know what fields are on a form? You go into sysui section, you interrogate the sysui view URI parameter and say, get this table, get this view, go get all the sections, and you could put together a server-side script that builds an object, an array of objects, and says, here's an array of fields and types and whatever else you want to put in there, and their positions. You can go through sysui section, you can go through sysui section element, build this object in a display business rule, pass that to the client script, and the client script now knows what fields are on every form. So not too difficult, but nice to know. What did I say? Say it again. Don't delete section 0 from sysui section. And if you must make changes directly to these tables, make a backup first. Export the appropriate tables to XML, sysui section, sysui section element, sysui view, sysui list element. Take those and back those up just like any good developer would do. Make a backup before you start experimenting, even in dev. It will really pay off. So, yeah, I noticed we're getting some pauses. I'm going to have to check bandwidth. Maybe it's an issue again. That takes care of it for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you hanging out and sticking with me through some technical issues. I will see you again on Monday, the 12th, I believe it's 13th of July, where we'll be digging deeper into the ArrayUtil script include. There's a few things in there that I didn't know what they're for, and I still scratch my head on one or two of them, but I will enlighten you on what I thought I knew what was in there. It's a very commonly used script include, and I'll shed some light on that and give some examples of how we can use that. So look forward to seeing you 2 p.m. UTC, Monday, July 13th. It's my sister's birthday. I should remember that. And I will see you again real soon. Until then, take care. Bye.